Welcome to Trash Talk MMA, the #1 podcast for news and insight that matters in the world of mixed martial arts. Brought to you live and unfiltered from all four corners of the globe by MMA aficionado, Antoine Peltier.
Hi everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Trash Talk MMA. I'm your host, Antoine Peltier. Today, there's a pretty big fight tonight. There's Gustafsson versus Johnson at UFC on Fox, so I'm looking forward to that. And I thought that before that big event happens, that we could talk a little bit about some of the more curious signings of late. Most namely, Rampage Jackson being signed back to the UFC, Crocop coming back to the UFC, and Kimbo Slice being signed to Bellator. So starting with Rampage, I think that was a pretty surprising signing since, there seemed to be a lot of bad blood between the UFC and him, and particularly him towards the UFC. He seemed to be pretty happy back in Bellator. Got 3 pretty good wins and seemed to be being treated well there. And I think when Bjorn Rebney left and Scott Coker came in, some things didn't go quite right for Rampage, or I think things probably weren't going right before anyways. And, all being said and done, he's back in the UFC now. He seems amped to be back and already has a fight lined up against Fabiano Maldonado. So, he's getting right to it. So speaking of that, when I saw that Rampage was coming back, a few names popped up in my mind of who I'd like to see him fight. For starters, I'm not really excited that Rampage is back in the UFC. I think he's pretty much done his thing in the sport as far as I'm concerned up until now. He had an awesome run, fantastic fighter in Pride, fantastic fighter in the UFC. Until pretty much he lost the belt to Forrest, and I think after that, he became very predictable, very one-dimensional. It seems like all he likes to do is box, all he likes to do is punch, and he's good at that, and he's good at defending himself. But him having a chance of ever winning the belt again, I think, is pretty preposterous. But anyway, whatever. He's a big name. He likes to fight, obviously, and he can make some good money doing it. So hey, it's good to have Rampage back. Just at least there's a name to care about on some cards now. So the first name that I actually did think of that would be interesting to see Rampage fight again actually was Fabiano Maldonado. I made a post about it or blogged about it on Facebook when that happened. And they're set to fight each other on April 25th in Montreal at UFC 186. So what's good about Maldonado is, like Page, he's almost entirely a puncher. He has a chin that only, heavyweights can really crack, and he's just overall a really fun fighter. I think him and Quinton could put on a heck of a co-main event, and nobody's really going to complain about seeing those two throw down. So that should be an interesting fight. I think it's a coin toss. Maldonado can hold his own for sure. He's a slugger. So is Rampage. Maybe Maldonado might even pull this one off, but I'd say it's a coin toss at this point. To put it all in context, Rampage is coming off of 3 wins. In Bellator, he knocked out Joey Beltran in the first round, knocked out Christian Mpubu in the first round, and then won a unanimous decision over King Mo in controversial fashion. A lot of people thought King Mo should have been given the nod. But to me, that was just another boring, overhyped, bad blood fight similar to what happened between Rampage and Rashad Evans back in the day. As far as Maldonado's concerned, he's coming off of... he's basically got on a 4-fight win streak at light heavyweight, with a loss to Stipe Miocic at heavyweight in between on a fight that he took on short notice, and he got smoked in 35 seconds. But otherwise, he has some TKO and decision wins over Hans Stringer, Gian Villante, and Joey Beltran. So obviously, not big brand wins, but wins nonetheless. And so a 4-fight win streak at light heavyweight against a Rampage who's at a 3-fight win streak. So anyway, there's some good stuff on the line here, and I think it's going to be a really fun fight to watch. So I'm looking forward to that. Even despite his sort of lackluster performances in the UFC towards the end of his last stint in there, I still have a soft spot in me for Rampage. Just, he's an awesome fighter. A lot of charisma, a lot of fun to watch on his good days. So I'll actually be rooting for him against Maldonado, and rooting for him because I'd like to see him get that win, and then it would be awesome to see him fight Shogun next. Rampage needs redemption from the hellacious shellacking that Hua handed him in Pride. If you haven't seen that fight, make sure you go try to find it. Hua just beat the shit out of Rampage. It was really, really nasty, and Rampage wants that one back. And I think the way Shogun's looked right now, I think Rampage could probably do some damage against him, and would like to get that back just for his pride. No pun intended. On his end, Shogun needs to stay relevant by beating a big name on a 3-fight win streak. So again, this could main event any card and no one would complain, So yeah, in context, Shogun is coming off a 34-second KO loss to Ovin St. Preux. Shocking. Before that, he was fighting Dan Henderson and was winning the fight up until the 3rd round quite handily, and then got absolutely smoked and KO'd by Hendo in the 3rd round. Before that, I believe he had a KO win over James Tahuna, where he looked really good, but again against subpar competition. And then before that, he had the shocking submission loss to Chael Sonnen. So, yeah, things aren't looking. Shogun's in a serious slump for sure, and a big victory over Rampage, who would then be coming in on a 4-fight win streak, would be exactly what Shogun needs. Then ultimately, if Rampage can make it past Maldonado and Shogun, I think a great fight to make would be a second fight against Rashad Evans. Rashad's been pretty inactive. He was supposed to fight Glover early in this new year. That fight was canceled due to a knee injury to Glover Teixeira. So we'll see if and when Rashad fights, but win or lose, I think a rematch with Rampage after the snooze fest they put on their first encounter after months of overblown trash talk, they'd have a good chance to redeem themselves by giving the fans the fight that they should have got in the first place. I was actually at that fight in Vegas, and I swear the best moment of that fight was actually Rashad's walk-in music, where he played one of the best tracks ever, Shook Ones Part 2 by Mobb Deep, and that's actually one of the probably still the best hip-hop beat ever in my opinion. So, but yeah, I wasn't there to listen to music. I wasn't there to get down to Mobb Deep. I was there to watch these two guys, put on an entertaining fight, and that they did not do. So let's see if Rampage can get a couple wins. We'll see who Rashad is put up against, and I think both of them would be able to, if they both decided to really get in the cage and do some damage, they could put on an entertaining fight. We both know they're capable of it. They just didn't do it the first time around. What's Rashad? Rashad's got, as far as Rashad Evans' streak is concerned right now, he's coming off a TKO win over Chael Sonnen. That was pretty easy and quick. He got a split decision win over Hendo in a fight I don't even remember, so it must have been hella boring. He lost a decision to Lil Nog before that, and of course before that, he lost a dominant decision to John Jones. Yeah, so Rashad needs a high-profile fight and a high-profile win over someone his size. Chael isn't exactly a natural 205er, so, take that as you will. But I think a big win over Rampage, who would at that point then be on a 5-fight win streak, would be really, really good for his career. So next up is the rather shocking signing of Mirko Crocop back to the UFC. So yeah, Crocop's back in the UFC after basically getting tooled 3 times by Frank Mir, Brendan Schaub, and Roy Nelson. Roy Nelson, that last fight was in October of 2011. So it's actually been 4 years since Crocop's been inside the octagon. And he's currently on a 2-fight winning streak, a pair of TKOs over Satoshi Ishii in Japan. So I think a lot of people are pretty, some people are actually outraged that Crocop's coming back. A lot of people are sort of butthurt about it because they don't want to see him tarnish his legacy anymore. But like I said, with Rampage, more than ever, the UFC needs names as they continue to build stars, putting on cards where, they've been putting on cards where hardcore fans like me don't even know, half the fighters on the card. It's pretty scary, I'll gladly take a Crocop fight on there just because I actually care about the outcome. As far as his position in the UFC and in the heavyweight division, let's be honest about it. I think at this point he just needs to get in there and avenge some losses, and it's not about going on a title run. Just get revenge and put on some entertaining fights and make some good money while he's 40 years old. So it's pretty much now or never. So obviously my first suggestion in terms of matchmaking would have been to put him against Gonzaga. Of course, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. That's exactly what the UFC did. He's already slated to face Gabriel Gonzaga at UFC Fight Night 64 in April in the UFC's first entry into Krakow, Poland. So the great thing about this fight is it's going to be a chance for Crocop to avenge what's easily his most humiliating loss, not only for the way it ended when he was head kicked into oblivion by Gabriel Gonzaga, but and how that one strike altered his career and broke his aura, in a way that we'd never seen happen. After that fight, I think Crocop was never the same. He was never truly feared in the UFC. And he served as a stepping stone for many a fighter, namely, Junior Dos Santos abused him. Brendan Schaub knocked him out. Roy Nelson knocked him out, so it'd be awesome to see Crocop come into this fight, this rematch with Gonzaga and, see him win it. I mean, if he could win it by head kick, I think that'd be a really special moment in mixed martial arts. And, if it could set up a trilogy, I mean, heck, why not, right? I mean, heck, everybody would like to see that happen, right? And I even made the funny suggestion that they could make it a fight where only head kicks are allowed and they just throw until one goes down. But we'll see what happens. I mean, I like Gonzaga too. He's coming off a KO loss to Mitrione and a decision loss to Stipe Miocic. But before that, he had a couple of really nice KO wins over, the tough Sean Jordan and Dave Herman, who are, not slouches by any means. I think of late, when Gabriel Gonzaga has shown up, he's absolutely killed everybody. He's got 3 L's in a row, which he has 2 losses in a row, and if he takes one more, then that pretty much signs his departure from the UFC. Gabriel Gonzaga is a good dude. You can tell he's a nice guy, and he trains hard, and he's always intimidating and fun to watch. I really, really like Gabriel Gonzaga, but of course I'll be rooting for Crocop in this one, as I'm pretty sure the entire MMA world will be doing. So if Crocop can get by Gonzaga, then I think really the next big fight they got to make is a rematch with Big Nog. If you saw their fight, they had a fight together back in Pride in 2003, and it's really one of the fondest fights that I can remember. Crocop was just blasting Big Nog, head kicks, punches, just tearing him to pieces on the feet. And, Big Nog, in typical Big Nog fashion, was able to weather the storm, get the fight to the ground, and score a shocking armbar victory over Mirko Crocop when Crocop was really at his most fearsome. So no matter what, this is a no-brainer. Win or lose versus Gonzaga, the UFC needs to make this fight. It's also one, in my opinion, that makes the most sense for Big Nog, who just can't fight these younger, faster dudes anymore. I was actually listening to Joe Rogan's podcast when he had Brian Stan on there as a guest. If you haven't listened to that yet, make sure you check it out. It's 3 hours of some incredible debates, incredible discussions, and they went into a whole talk about liver kicks, and they brought up Crocop and the infamous picture of him liver kicking Heath Herring, and it looks like Heath Herring's taking a baseball bat to the liver. That's actually another gnarly finish by Crocop. But he was saying on that interview that it takes Big Nog over an hour of just warming up before he can actually even train. So it's not even like he just, warms up for 5-10 minutes and trains. He actually has to do a whole training workout before he can actually do an MMA workout. So, if that's not indicative that the clock is ticking on Big Nog's career, I don't know what is. But I think that these two would match up great. When Big Nog fought Randy Couture, that was somewhat of a veteran old-timer fight, even though I'm older than Big Nog, which is insane if you were to put his picture up against mine. But I think at this stage, Crocop would actually win this fight, and who knows if a trilogy fight would need to happen there. I don't think it would, but I think it would be great to see Crocop get a chance at redemption in that one. Now, my third pick of possible opponents for Crocop, I think if you were able to get through Gonzaga, get through Big Nog, is I would actually really like to see him fight Andrei Arlovsky. Those guys have both been around for a heck of a long time. Arlovsky looked really good against Bigfoot. but he looked like ass against Brendan Schaub. I mean, I'm not even really sure he should have been given that split decision. So I think everybody's like, ooh, Arlovsky's back. I want to see a couple more fights before making an opinion on that. I think the jury's still out as far as I'm concerned about the whole, Andrei Arlovsky's comeback. But that being said, Andrei Arlovsky is 8-1-1 in his last 10 fights. So not exactly against the cream of the crop of competition. But out of those fights, he's had 5 KOs. And he's on a good little roll. This to me, Crocop versus Arlovsky, that would have been one of those classic UFC versus Pride fights that fans would have loved to have seen back in the day when both guys were really considered in their prime. Arlovsky's been fighting MMA since 1999. Crocop's been fighting MMA since 2001, and he's been fighting in K1 since 96. Pretty crazy stats, man. These guys have been around for a long, long time and deserve everybody's respect just for the amount of work that they've put in. So both of these guys are super veterans who still have some life in them. I think if Crocop can win those 2 first fights, I think this would be a great possible final fight for him in the UFC. That being said, if somehow he can actually pull off some wins there and look good and stay healthy and stay uninjured, then there's one final revenge match that that Crocop could get, and that would be against Mark Hunt. Now, I think at this point today and now, you definitely would not want to put Mark Hunt against Crocop. He'd probably kill him in public. But we'll see what happens. Mark Hunt's looked absolutely fantastic of late, even in his KO losses to Junior Dos Santos and Verdum. He put in some great fights, and the Verdum loss, that was shocking. I mean, getting knocked out by Junior Dos Santos, that happens to a lot of people, and he'd put up a great fight until the moment that he did get KO'd. But recently, Mark Hunt's got some great wins. He's the first guy to truly face plant Roy Nelson. He broke Stefan Struve's jaw. He knocked out Czech Congo and had that awesome all-out war with Bigfoot that he should have been given a win for when Bigfoot failed the drug test, and then the draw that was initially given out remained in place. I don't know why that wasn't revised, but that'll just go down into one of those weird decisions that lie in the hands of the commissions that nobody really has any say over. So yeah, that'd be it for Crocop. Let's see what happens against Gonzaga. Be great to see another fight against Big Nog, and would be really cool to see a fight with Arlovsky and potentially Mark Hunt. We'll see what happens with Mark Hunt. I mean, that would probably be a couple of years away before it would happen anyway, with the amount of fights these guys take, which isn't that frequent really. So the final recent signing that I'd like to talk about is Kimbo Slice. So Kimbo's back to the sport of mixed martial arts. He has signed to Bellator after leaving MMA on a TKO loss to Matt Mitrione back in May 2010 in the UFC. Since that time, he's gone 7-0 in pro boxing with six knockouts, 4 in the first round. So I'm not going to judge, the level of his competition, but to put it mildly, none of his opponents have Wikipedia pages. So I'm no boxing expert, but I'm sure that that means something. But that being said, whatever, at least he's stayed active, and he's stayed active in combats, in legit combat sports. So I mean, let's be frank about this too. Kimbo doesn't need to prove he's a great MMA fighter. He just needs some good stand and bang slugfests and put asses in seats. And Bellator is going to benefit from having him on their roster for sure, because if you look at their heavyweight roster, they've got nobody in there that can put asses in seats. So Kimbo will do that. So I think the most important thing when it comes to Kimbo and Bellator is they've got to give him really the right type of competition, or it's going to look like a freak show pretty fast. I checked out the roster on their website, and I think the best first fight for him would be a scrap with LeVar Johnson. I think that'd be a great first fight, as LeVar is pretty much, definitely in the same vein of a fighter as Kimbo. He just likes to go in there, throw down, kill or get killed. So I mean, LeVar is 1-5 in his last 6 bouts, but he always comes to fight. I get excited when I see LeVar Johnson on a card, not because of the level of competition he brings, but he brings a great intensity, and when he has had wins, they've been crushing. They've been highlight reel ones. I mean, he destroyed Pat Barry in the UFC, and it was pretty frightening. He destroyed Joey Beltran as well. He always comes to fight, and as long as the fight stays standing, and it will, he has just as good a chance as Kimbo of landing the haymaker. So I think LeVar Johnson, that would be a perfect first fight for Kimbo Slice in Bellator. After that, I think James Thompson would be a good fight. It'd be a good revenge fight for James Thompson. Their first fight was a rather awesomely entertaining affair, with Thompson acquainting the American public with the joys of exploding cauliflower ear. I remember that fight in Elite XC where Kimbo landed, I believe, a right hook on him, and he had a huge bowl of cauliflower just explode and fly in the air. It was disgusting and awesome at the same time. So I know James Thompson would love to have that fight back. He protested the stoppage back in the day, even though his eyes were rolling in his head like a slot machine in Vegas. Where's he at? He's 5-0-1 in his last 6, and even has a win over Bobby Lashley, surprisingly. However, before that, James Thompson was 1-8. So, I mean, he's on a good roll now, but, he's obviously not an elite fighter by any means. But again, it would just be another interesting fight and a familiar face and a great rematch with a lot of eyeballs tuning in. Make for a fun scrap. Then finally, I think for Kimbo, if he can get by LeVar and James Thompson, I think a pretty cool fight for him would be against Bobby Lashley. If Kimbo can beat those two, give him Lashley, and that would be a huge, wrestling/MMA crossover fight that would put crazy asses in seats, and Kimbo would be forced to bring some ground skills, as Lashley would just dump him on his ass and tear him apart on the mat. So win or lose, I think would be a huge fight in terms of viewership, and would be a win-win-win for everybody involved. It'd be a huge pairing for Bellator, and there's Kimbo might have a chance in it, but I definitely think the smart bet would be Bobby Lashley. He's been looking pretty good, and he's fit, and he's definitely more well-rounded than Kimbo is. Now, interestingly enough, Kimbo himself has been asking for a couple fights. He mentioned that he'd love a rematch with Petrozelli. Petrozelli is, if you don't remember, is the guy who actually knocked Kimbo Slice out when he quickly replaced Ken Shamrock on what would eventually be the last Elite XC fight. And he knocked Kimbo Slice out in 14 seconds with a short punch against the cage. And I know that was pretty embarrassing for Kimbo, and that's the fight that put Petrozelli on the map. So he is retired, but I just saw a tweet from him where he accepts the fight if Kimbo is really serious about it. So we'll see what happens there. Sure, that could be an interesting fight, but really, Petrozelli's not a heavyweight. But hey, that's a chance. There's a strong chance that could be the fight that they put together too. I think that Petrozelli would win it again. I think he'd win it quickly and probably in very similar fashion. Otherwise, Kimbo's asked for Tito Ortiz, and I think that would just be a terrible fight for Kimbo. I think Tito, even not being a heavyweight, would come in pretty much weighing the same as Kimbo, and would absolutely tool him. There's just no way. There's no way that Kimbo would win that fight. So I think that's just a silly proposition. And I'd like to see Tito, still fighting at light heavyweight in Bellator, and try to get some more good fights in there. Maybe see him up against Kimbo or one of the other top 205ers in that league. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on the recent signings of Quentin Rampage Jackson and Crocop to the UFC and Kimbo Slice to Bellator. This has been the Trash Talk MMA podcast. I'm your host, Antoine Pelletier. Thanks for tuning in. It's been my pleasure. Make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes. If you like it, please give me a 5-star rating. I would really appreciate that. Share the show, man. Let everybody know. Tweet about it. Let your friends on Facebook know. Let anybody who's into MMA know about it. I really want to reach as many people as possible. And, give me your feedback. Hit me up on Twitter. Hit me up on Facebook, Trash Talk MMA. Hit me up on trashtalkmma.com. Hopefully this site will be up by the time this is released. But yeah, just really want to hear your guys' thoughts. Tell me what you like about the show. Tell me what I can do better. And let's make this a community thing. All right, guys. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Trash Talk MMA podcast. Be sure to visit trashtalkmma.com. And don't forget to follow Antoine on Twitter at TrashTalkMMA. Let us know you're listening. Use #TrashTalkMMA.